This interview is being recorded by Ericka Carter from the Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in the New Media Incubator. It is 9:49 a.m. on February 15th, 2019. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. No, thank you for being here. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Cookeville, Tennessee in 1981. I was born in a little hospital in a small town like Andy Griffith.
Cookeville?
Cookeville.
Oh, Cookeville. Okay. What is that? What big city is that next to?
Cookeville, Tennessee is 45 minutes east of Nashville.
Okay. Give a little geographic knowledge there. Who were your parents and what were their occupation?
My mother, her name is Marcia Sanders. She is a child care provider. She's worked in child care for over 30 years. My father was actually an immigrant from Nigeria. His name was Benjamin Nyanke. He came to America in the late 70s to get his education. It was back when we were giving education visas to some of the top students across the world. So he was one of the people in Africa who had gotten the highest scores in a trip to America to realize the American dream.
And did he?
He got 2 degrees, mechanical and electrical engineering. Along the way, he met my mother. They fell fast in love. They got married, and hey, then there was me.
Okay. And do you have any siblings, or is it just you?
I have half siblings. So my father went back to Nigeria probably 3 years after I was born. He's remarried since then, and he has 5 or 6 children. So I have a lot of half siblings in Nigeria, but as far as my mother's concerned, I'm her only child.
Do you ever see them? Have you met them?
I have not. I've not even met my father either. So I've spoken to him on the phone maybe one time, and that was in 2009.
Wow.
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, was even though I had never seen him nor spoken to him, the first thing he did was go into dad mode, asking me about my education and my grades and the kinds of things a father would want to know. So.
Okay. Let's talk about high school since you
Sure.
brought that up. Did you have any special activities in high school?
High school, it's funny, I had made a pact with one of my friends in junior high that, I know it sounds crazy, we would not be losers in high school. I was very introverted in middle school, and I wanted to kind of turn that around when I got to high school. So I got heavily involved in sports. I played soccer. I also ran track in the spring. I did student government. You name it, I was doing it. Graduated top of the class, wasn't valedictorian, but I had, you know how they have like superlatives and things like that? So it was the highest superlative. It's called Miss Cavalier. And I would say I turned it around since junior high, but it was still a good experience. I loved staying involved. I loved volunteering. I was a Girl Scout. So I did Girl Scouts even in high school.
You fancy.
I loved it.
Okay. Did you graduate in Tennessee?
I graduated high school out of Cookeville, Tennessee, and then I went to Clemson. So I studied at Clemson. I studied business and aerospace science at Clemson University between 2000 and 2004. And also my scholarship was through ROTC, so that's how my military ties started with the Air Force, was they had given me a full ride to Clemson.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about how ROTC works for people that may not know?
Yes, well, it's the Reserve Officer Training Corps, and basically it's a prerequisite to you being commissioned as an officer in the United States military. So you, for 4 years, you're going to school, and you're also taking courses to teach you about preparation for active duty. So you'll have drill days, you'll drill on the field. There's a couple summers where you have to go to a boot camp that's just for the cadets. There's operations experiences where they would take you for a few weeks to an active duty base and teach you things. All of it is slow prep for active duty. And for exchanging that time, you also get 4-year commitment in the military after you graduate. So you get those 4 years of free education, minimum 4 years of service when you graduate.
Okay. What branch did you choose?
United States Air Force.
Why?
Why not? Well, my family, we're a 4-generation military family. We've served in every branch except for the Coast Guard, but we're still recruiting. Look, you got to start young. But that was the conversation at the dinner table. Not so much like, hey, what's your game? Like, once you start turning like 16, 17, it starts going into, have you thought about the military? So which one of you in your generation is going to go? So talk amongst yourselves, because somebody's going in the military. My cousin, he was a Marine. He went into the Marine Corps. He was a couple years older than me. And for my generation, my first cousin, I was like, he checked the box. I don't have to do it. And he got injured right after he left Parris Island. He was doing cold weather training, and they took him out on a mountain skiing, and he's never skied in his entire life. He's a country boy. He got a concussion, and he got medically discharged. So we were sitting around talking during a holiday with my grandfather, and I said, well, you know, that counts. He's like, no, because his thought was retirement. He was Korea, Vietnam War veteran, served over 24 years. So he's like, you're going the long haul, who's next? And he was in the Air Force, and I admired his service. I'm a grandparent's kid, and I said, I'm just going to follow in his footsteps and go into the Air Force. So
that's the reasoning.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any conversations or talks with your grandpa about his service?
All the time.
Really?
All the time. So growing up, we lived in like a little country house on the outskirts of Cookeville. And at one point, there were 10 people in a 2-bedroom house. So it was me, my mother, my grandparents, my aunt and her sons. And then at one point, my uncle and his kids moved in too. So we all lived in this house. But every morning, the routine was people were doing chores. My grandmother is getting the day started with breakfast. My grandfather and I would go take a walk. And we would go take a walk. He'd have his walking stick. I'd have my little walking stick. And we're out in the country, just talking. And when I was young, I didn't really understand a lot of the things that he was saying. It almost seemed like in hindsight, I'm like, this was his therapy. They didn't have PTSD, all the treatments now and the programs now that they have that you can talk about these things. So this was him getting it out. This was him, you know, working through his past and trying to make peace with some of the things that he experienced. And, you know, I thought it was fascinating. Sometimes I thought it was a tall tale, the way he would tell these stories. It's like, you know, back then, Tutti Frutti, they didn't have harnesses. So you climb up on the airplane, you fall off, you're just going to die. Okay. He was an aircraft mechanic. So he would talk about how he would get out there and some of the guys were like, I'm not flying my plane unless Charlie Farrell is the one who worked on it. And he had that reputation. You could tell that so many people admired what he had done on active duty. And so that was my experience. Growing up with him, talking with him pretty much every day of my childhood was ingrained in me. And it was an easy decision to go into the Air Force because I just saw how outstanding of a person he turned out to be.
Tutti Frutti, huh?
Yes, Tutti Frutti.
I wasn't gonna slide.
That's what he called me.
Okay. So 4 years, ROTC, college. Did you do anything else in college?
I was still a jock. I've loved sports. I've been running since I was 9, back when they had like the Hershey's relays. And I was like, what do you tell a kid? The prize is to go to the Hershey's chocolate factory if you win. Like, I was running. I didn't know if I was ever going to make it. I never made it out there, but I'd been doing sports since I was really young. So my senior year of high school, actually, there were scouts there, mostly for track, because I was better at track. I loved soccer, but I was better at track and field. I did the 200 meters. And that senior year, I'm like, this is it. This is my shot. I'm going to get college paid for through sports. I had my first game of soccer senior year and shattered my ACL. So to have like worked so hard and you know that that's what you're destined to do, and having to pick yourself up, by the bootstraps, pun intended, like pick yourself up and say, I still have something that I can accomplish even with this going away. My time's never recovered really. All the scouts disappeared, so I still finished out senior year. The season still was okay, but it wasn't what I thought. I was really blessed to be able to get that ROTC scholarship. But during the summer, you know how that they have infomercials now, like the late night infomercials? Well, imagine that, but in like postcards. Are you an athlete without a home? We can train you. Do you want to be a Division I athlete? And I was like, did they know that I tore my ACL? This is Clemson. This is Clemson rowing crew, women's crew. And they were recruiting. They said, we can train you. You don't have to have any rowing experience whatsoever. We will turn you into a Division I athlete. So I was like, yes, I'm an athlete without a home. First day on campus, I said, I'm trying out. So I tried out. It was 11 weeks. But I did freshman year. I was on women's crew. Never rowed a day in my life. But there I was in a boat with 7 other women. And and I look back on it, that's the hardest sport ever. I've played a lot of sports, but that is the hardest one. I also did track, so I just couldn't give up on the track dream. After I came back from camp, I went to Lackland Air Force Base for my cadet boot camp. Lackland Air Force Base, Texas. I came back that summer, and the track team, for the first time, they're saying you can walk on. If you guys want to try out, come to a practice. And rowing had wrecked me. Like, I couldn't hardly keep up with those women. They had an attrition rate of like 70%. I walked on, and the track coach, she said, you can keep up with everybody. You're not top 3, but you can keep up with everybody. So I'm going to make you a pentathlete. And I looked at her, I was like, what is that? I don't even, I've heard of it, but I've never done that. Basically, it's 5 events. So you're doing high jump, long jump, and shot put, 200, 800 in one day. So that's what I did late junior and senior year, was track and field. And that was my college experience. I was studying, I did rowing, I did track, and ROTC.
That's a lot. That is absolutely a lot.
I think high school kind of prepped me, since I was just
Miss Popular.
I don't function well with a clear schedule. Like, I need it to be high octane, busy, busy, busy. I don't do well when things are just like not busy.
The military is good for keeping you busy. So let's talk about the military. So you graduate, and now there's a 4-year commitment. You have to get started. Mm-hmm. You're a
second lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
So you commission, and you're a second lieutenant, which, I was one of the first officers in my family. First female officer, that's for sure. But it was a great honor. My grandfather, he had been diagnosed with lung cancer, and that was really tough because he wasn't really talking to anyone about it. It's like you could tell something was wrong. You have that, like, he was a smoker. He smoked cigars all the time. So he had been smoking since he was young. Back then, they worked in the tobacco fields, and there was the warnings and stuff about smoking didn't exist. I would take him to appointments sometimes at the VA, and there was one time that stood out to me. It was just really traumatic, and I told my mom, I was like, I don't think any kid should ever go through that. He had to have a lung biopsy, and they sent him home like the same day. I didn't know how invasive it was. I didn't know, like, what they were trying to do. They were trying to figure out, like, how extensive the lung cancer was. But I was driving him back from the VA, and he he started coughing, and I'm like, you okay? And like the next thing I knew, like he coughed up blood like all over my car. Like I almost wrecked my car. It was so traumatic, and this is the first time that I'd ever seen him like in pain. He couldn't fake it. He was wrecked. I pulled over. I tried to help him. We didn't have cell phones, so it was just me and him. And I was like, please God, just let him make it. I knew that I was going to commission in probably, a couple years, and that's all I really wanted, was for him to witness it. And he did. So he didn't make it to my graduation. He did go to Clemson. He traveled to Clemson with the family. He wasn't feeling good enough for my graduation. He said, but I'll be there for your commission. They have this thing called the Silver Dollar Salute. And it's the first person to salute you once you cross over into active duty. And Clemson has a beautiful way that they do this ceremony. There are stairs that lead down to a mold of a soldier, and you walk down them slowly. You stand in the mold, and it's just symbolic of the journey of becoming an airman soldier. And then when you step out, you take a left face, and the first person to salute you is there, and they render your salute. So my mom, she's like, your grandfather's going to make it. He'll be there. So we had a backup just in case. But I came down those stairs, and I have a picture of it. It's just cemented in my mind because he also had back problems. He used a cane. And I took a left face, and I was standing there, and it just was like, it will take your breath away how tall he was standing. And he rendered a salute to put all other salutes to shame. I'm like, this man, the culmination of decades of service. You could see it in just one moment. You could just see why everyone respected this man. And I almost forgot what I was supposed to do, because I wanted to just cry, because I was so grateful. I was grateful to be in that moment. I was grateful that this was even happening. I was just grateful to have this moment in time. And I saluted him back and gave him a big hug. And I was like, I'm so glad you're here. He's like, I wouldn't have missed it. And he passed away probably a year later. It was about a year, less than a year.
Okay, you got me in tears.
Yeah.
Okay, literally. It is a wonderful feeling, and I'm so happy that you got to experience that.
It is a blessing. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
But my first base to get to that point, I went to Robins Air Force Base, Georgia. So that was my first duty station, was Robins Air Force Base. And it wasn't what I expected, because they'd also told me that I was going to be an acquisitions officer, which I was like, I don't know what in the world that is, because I wanted to be intel, and I was mad. Like, we didn't have any room, but this career field's wide open. You're going to be a 63 Alpha acquisitions program manager. You have a business degree, you'll figure it out. Okay, fine. I didn't know that meant, like, you're in an office. It's like corporate type of setting. So yeah, I walk in, and it's like cubicle city. I'm like, what is this? I was just so confused. I'm in my military uniform, but I'm in an office. And I remember the lady saying, your desk is between Larry and Barry. I was like, that's crazy. But there was one guy named Larry and one guy named Barry, and there was my little cubicle, Lieutenant Tkach. I'm like, okay.
Were Larry and Barry civilians?
They were.
Oh, okay.
And that was the other thing. I'm like, there's civilians everywhere. But that was the new thing that I was learning, that there's so many facets to the military. It's not what you watch on TV, that you're out there in the foxhole. Like, it's not like that. Even not like my grandfather's experiences that he was talking about. This was just really new to me, but that's where I started.
So can you walk me through what a day was like as an acquisitions manager?
Right, they call us chairborne rangers. I couldn't stand that. Like,
Okay.
I mean, you're in meetings, so you have your staff meetings. Acquisitions is you are concerned with cost, schedule, and performance. So you are acquiring capabilities for the warfighter to do what they do out operationally. So what we're doing as we're either talking to our customers, who are the soldiers going out in the field. Your customer could be security forces who need equipment that they're going to use domestically. You're going to work with companies like Lockheed Martin, a number of big time contractors to make this technology or procure this capability. You have to know a little bit about contracts. So I would say acquisitions, you're a jack of all trades when it comes to management, contracting, engineering, even science and technology sometimes. I remember briefing the Air Force chief scientist. I was a lieutenant, and I was like, the amount of studying that I had to do about composite metal, like different types of metal that was going to go on a C-130 aircraft. I had to be able to brief him at his level that he could understand, and I had to study enough to know how to answer his questions sufficiently. You're like the jack of all trades, but you're really a glorified team leader because you have these specialties that are on your team. So my program management team would have those functions, and we would all be working together towards a common goal.
And your team would include enlisted
Yes.
people?
So sometimes it would have enlisted troops. I remember when I was working at Robbins, we worked on C-130 modifications. So your team would also consist of folks who are working on the production line because the aircraft is coming in, the production lines are coming into the aircraft hangars. You have a certain amount of time to put the modifications on the aircraft before it's about to go out again. So yeah, you have to work out. That was kind of the highlight for me because anytime I had to go out on the flight line, I'm seeing my grandfather and him talking about they don't have harnesses. Like, and you see them, they have their little belts and stuff. I was like, well, they do now, thank God, because they're soft compared to him. He's like, they're so soft, but that's all right. It was nostalgic. It was fun. I enjoyed climbing in and out of the aircraft and learning with those guys. It was really great.
That is wonderful. Okay, how long were you at that base?
I was there for 4 years. 4 years.
You did? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they pretty much move you. At that point, they had decided that a little bit of longevity needs to happen, but not too long that you get comfortable because they're looking at breadth and depth of experience. So they want you to understand acquisitions, but they want you to work on different platforms so that you can see acquisitions from different standpoints. So I was there, while I was at Robbins, I worked on the Air Force Small Arms program. I also worked on the F-16 modifications. Then I went over to the C-130s, and in the C-130 modifications, I was on the center wing replacement program, which is basically the aircraft and the wings, and it's literally the center part. The problem was because the aircraft, the C-130H, was so old, the center wing was cracking, and literally the wings will fall off. So you don't want that to happen. It was a multi-billion-dollar project to replace all of those and get them in line at the same time the C-130J is being rolled out. So you have that modification schedule that you're managing. I was program manager of MAFS-2, which is the Military Airborne Firefighting System, which I think was probably one of the highlights of my whole career because you're straight out of college, and that's what people don't realize is the pressure of being an officer day one. They don't care how long you've been in. They don't care what your level of experience or comfort level is. You're an officer and you're in charge, and the buck stops with you if something goes wrong. That's what I tell people. If we do good, I will give all the credit to my team. If we do bad, I'll take one. Because I think that's the essence of leadership. You lift up your people. You take accountability for when things don't go right. MAFS-2 had happened at a time when C-130 center wing box was the most important project. It was the number one project in that division. So they gave me Maths 2 as a side project when you got some free time. All they're doing is they're replacing the tank on the C-130. It's a roll-on, roll-off technology to fight surge wildland forest fires. It's used by the U.S. Forest Service. So if there's a forest fire, this is a if there's a forest fire, if domestically they cannot put it out in their own state, if it gets too big and someone has to call on federal support, then they'll call you. I was like, well, that's not going to happen. So I'll just, we're tinkering around with the new tank design. So my engineers are working. There's no navigator nor pilot who would get in a plane with an uncertified technology. So the engineers were just taking their time to do the design. And that's when we got a call from California. It was Governor Schwarzenegger had written the president saying, California is on fire, help. And you could see the email trail I kept. It was like, okay, we're going to call Air Force Materiel Command. The commander is like, we know that there's a Forest Service program. Where is it at? We think it's in AFMC. Yeah, I think that's down there at Robbins. So you see the letter to the commander at Robbins. Yep, that's in C-130, the C-130 office, C-130 division leader. Yeah, that's somewhere in my branch. Hold on, let me find a name. Guys, find me the program manager. And then here's the branch chief, who's a colonel. He's like, my lieutenant is the program manager of the technology that you need. So it went from this little bitty program to every time you turned on the news, pick a channel, it was my program. And lives are being lost, houses are burning down. It was a everyday, all day, put the team together, phone calls, the commander's office asking you to ghostwrite all his remarks for CNN, Fox News stuff. I'm 23 and I'm ghostwriting for the 4-star.
What year is it?
Oh my gosh, 2008, California wildfires. And that was, the whole rest of my career. I love that, but I just thought at that moment, that was the level of responsibility they gave to a 20-something-year-old with full confidence. And even I would sit there sometimes thinking, how? How is this happening? You go home to your little town over Thanksgiving, you're like, how's everything going? Well, I'm doing good. Still working at old Charlie's, everything's going great. And they'll tell you about their whole life. And then they're like, so what'd you do last summer? And I'm like, I kept California from burning to the ground. This is what military people go through. If you ever talk to a military person, there is a disconnect because they're like, the level of responsibility that they give us will blow your mind. But it's train and equip. So they've trained you, they've equipped you, you can do it. But when you come home is when you realize, I'm changed. I'm different. But it's humbling at the same time.
So true.
Yeah.
So tell me about what you did in your personal time, your free time.
What? I love to write. I do like to write. I like to write fiction. I like languages. So I would go on YouTube or the library and try to learn a new language. I like to cook. I like to cook too. But I noticed a lot of times my joy came from just I'm going to sleep. It's the little things for me. You know what, this Saturday, I'm just going to close the blinds. I'm just going to sleep. I'm going to turn off my alarm and just sleep a good 13 hours. So that's a lot of time when people were wondering what I would do when I love high octane, but I have my days where it's just and full stop. So it brings me just the same amount of joy.
Did you like Georgia?
I liked Georgia because it was close to home. I was glad to still stay close to home because my mom, she was a empty nester. I was her only child, and I cared about her. She got remarried herself, so my stepdad and her moved to, first they moved to North Carolina, and then they moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I was just glad to be close to her. So it was good for me.
Okay.
I didn't want to leave the South either because I don't like being cold.
And you live in Ohio now.
I know. And it's funny. Okay. I told myself when I started in the Air Force, I will never, ever, ever live in Ohio. That was my Air Force goal. Never be stationed at Wright Pat. And they're like, you're in acquisitions. Wright Pat is like the mothership of acquisitions. You cannot avoid it. I said, watch me. I'm going to do it. And I was determined. I didn't want to go up north. I didn't want to go anywhere out of the Southeast. So yes, there were real tears when my next assignment was Boston. So.
Okay, so that would mean that you did extend your contract past the 4 years.
They always hit you with the, hey, guess what? You're getting promoted, and look how your salary jumps up. So you're like, wow, I make captain, I just jump up in salary. So to me, that was like balling out of control. Of course I'm staying.
And you're still single with no children? Yes?
Still single. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yeah, you are balling out of control.
I was very frugal too. I really, I hated debt. I don't like it. I'm gonna try to pay off as much stuff as possible. So that was really my focus the first 4 years, was just paying stuff off. And then whenever I made captain, I was like, wow, okay, I can reach my financial goals a lot faster if I just stick around. It's not like I'm having a bad time. I love it. And so another 4 years, let's go.
Okay, so on to Boston.
Hanscom Air Force Base. Yes, that was definitely gave me a different perspective, because this is the first time I'm working with people who are out in like operational stuff. They put me on commercial off-the-shelf qualification programs. Basically, what you're doing is looking at technologies that are already in existence, and you're matching them up with people like security forces and their requirements. But this was the first time that I'm being challenged to teach other people acquisitions, because they didn't really understand that. You have this thing, we call it like widget happy. So, you know how there's this famous clip of Michael Jackson, and it makes me laugh because like this is what it reminded me of. Michael Jackson, he's very eccentric. He doesn't think like a normal person thinks. He walked into this department store of really expensive furniture, and he's like, I'd like one of those and one of those. What's that? That's $70,000, Michael. I'd like that too, and two of those, So in one day he spent like $13 million, and like he just got a bunch of stuff. But how does this help you? And that's what it was like talking to them. Was, we need some guns, we need a new Humvee, we need so they go through this whole list, and like, what capability gap are you filling with this widget? And what it came down to is it's not that they didn't understand capability gaps, but they didn't have a person to sit there and make a process that everyone could agree on that was fast. The other thing people complain about with acquisitions is that it takes too long. The process is too long and cumbersome and political. So you may have a capability gap, but you don't have enough funds. You have a capability gap, you got funds, but Senator so-and-so wants you to buy something else because he talked to someone and promised them that he was going to buy a Humvee versus a gun. And when it doesn't make any sense. So a lot of that stuff gets in the way of an acquisitions program manager doing what they need to do. And it was really a challenge to make them a process that was quick and met their needs. But I was like, challenge accepted, let's try. I mean, I loved it. I loved going to the trade shows. That's what we would do. We would go to all the trade shows, and they're like, I would like one of those. No, nope. You need you need to focus on, do you want to have all of your troops able to have night vision? I mean, what capability do you need? How do we translate air superiority into a technology that we're going to procure? Either we're going to buy something that's already in existence and slightly modify it for you, or we're just going to buy what's out there. Because making something takes forever, and that's what we did. We're going to buy it off the shelf, or we're going to buy it off the shelf and tweak it. And then after 3 years of that, they moved me to command. So I was the Tkach chief, Commander's Action Group chief for the last Electronic Systems Center commander. So the Tkach chief was my first staff job. Basically, you have a team of enlisted troops. You have also a team of officers that you're working together to manage the commander's budget and also do awards and decorations and any staff work that would eventually need the commander's signature on it.
It sounds like that came with a promotion.
Nope, that was captain. That was a captain position.
And the commander was what rank?
3-star.
Oh my.
Mm. He did have an exec, so he had Commander's Action Group. He also had a program executive group, the PEG, and then he also had an executive officer, which like is his right hand, and that was a field grade officer. He was a major. So, but that CAG chief was a captain, and to have other officers working for you and to have a team of enlisted folks, it was possibly the hardest that I've ever worked. My days were, you get there before the commander, which is sometimes like 5:36. I was sometimes going home at 8 p.m., 9. There's a couple times towards the end that I just slept in the office, and I would go to the gym, shower and change, and go back to my desk.
Wow.
It's a lot, and it's only 1 year because the burnout is real. Like, you're having to stay 2 steps ahead of the whole executive staff. So that was a very humbling, life-changing year for me as a leader. It was just leadership on steroids. So, and learning from the 3-star how he thinks, because you're trying to make things for his signature, which means it would have to sound like what he would like. So,
I had a boss like that once. It's like, well, he can't have that. No. Line through, line through, line through, line through. Go change that, bring it back. Almost there, try again.
Yeah.
I understand.
And you learn a lot, I mean, because eventually that's really what it is. Like, you're supporting your leadership, but you have to think outside the box. You have to think outside of your own way of doing things. Sometimes it was frustrating because, like, well, that's not how that's not what it's about. It's about what they need.
He was a captain who thought he was a general. So I still love him. I still love him. But yeah, he was a captain that acted like a general.
Oh my gosh.
And I was an enlisted who just followed orders.
It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, followership is a skill that not many people have, but it's just as important to be a good follower, to be a good support person. That was a challenge for me because I was so used to, as a program manager, having a certain set of autonomy. So I take everybody's input, but I'm the one making the decision. Now I'm gathering input and giving input, and someone else is making the decision. And when they don't agree, I was like, well, yes, sir. Salute, follow orders. I got you.
Move along. Okay, so tell me a little bit about Boston. That had to be quite a change.
Hated it.
Okay. That answers.
I don't do cold weather. I think, I sometimes think maybe it's genetic because I'm part Nigerian. Like, I need to live towards the equator. It's like Superman. Like, where's the power come from? He flies up. He has to fly close to the sun to power up. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like I need to be in hot weather so I feel normal. If I'm cold, it's just, I don't know how I'm doing it now, but
Do you take a lot of vacations?
I do. That's what people are like, where are you at? It's someplace sunny.
I'm from California. I
Ah,
understand.
see,
I understand.
and you're here in Ohio. We're both here in Ohio. How?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I imagine you didn't get out, do a lot. I know that last year you had no free time, but prior to that,
You know what? My last year, I did move to Jamaica Plain. So I wanted to have like the real living in Boston experience. Uh, Bedford, Massachusetts is where the base was. And if you tell someone from Boston, oh yeah, I'm at Hanscom, it's literally like 20 miles. But they talk about it like you live in a different country. Like, you're where? Oh my God, you live out in Bedford? But I was like, okay, Bostonians look at it like it's forever away. So let me just move to Boston so I can feel what it's like to live in the city. It had its great points. I lived in Jamaica Plain. Jamaica Plain was like a melting pot. Literally, you can stand in the middle of town and look down different streets, and all the different streets are different cultures. So you'll have like a lot of immigrants, a lot of I had Haitians, there's Hispanic. Then we had what we called the hippie side of town, where everything's like super upscale and everyone is like Birkenstocks. And in the wintertime, you're like, what? I got my cardigan. It's good. I'm like, and everything was like super posh on one side of town. And I went on Craigslist and found a set of roommates. And I said, I'm going to pay this girl. She was a violinist from China who actually was world famous. I didn't know this. Like, she was a world famous violinist. And she was going back to China for a semester. And she let me have her room for the whole 6 months for $600. Yeah. But this is how crazy it was. As soon as she kept badgering me online, she's like, can you sign paperwork today? Come by. It was like, oh, you want me to move now? Like, you want me to sign the paperwork now? So I got out there to Jamaica Plain. I signed the paperwork with her, the lease. I handed her $600. Like, here, it's cash. Like, our BAH up there is like $2,200 a month. So she's like, can you take me to the airport? I'm like, you're what? And she's like, I leave today. I'm like, you're leaving today? Now? Yes. So she just handed me her keys and was like, off in the airport, gone, China, bye. And she's like, you have roommates? Okay, thanks for letting me know. This is strange. My roommates were, they were going to school. They were both Harvard. They were both super smart. One girl was from India. The other girl was, it was Evie. They called her Evie. She was Latin American marketing student. And now she owns a huge marketing firm. They were both really amazing, but that was my last year. So I got to have that experience, but I did not like the fact that it took me nearly 2 hours to get to work. Yeah. That's why a lot of times I was like, I'm just going to sleep at the headquarters because I do not want to be in that traffic. And their drivers are insane. So.
Makes sense.
I almost died in Boston. I got hit by a snowplow on my way to work. Yeah.
Did you have any injuries from that?
I had a really bad concussion. Just like lost about 12 hours, but walked away from it. But it was funny because the tow truck driver, I guess, who would come to pick up my car, so what had happened was I was leaving for work, and there's like a T intersection, and there's trees. And so the snowplow was coming around the corner. It's 30 miles an hour on that road, but this guy was going way fast. So I was like, well, I couldn't see him at the time going really fast, so I just started to take a right. And before I knew it, my right tire had spun on some ice. And I'm trying to get past it, and yeah, right on the driver's side. Boom. So the car spins out into a ditch. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's cold. And my car is off in the ditch in the dark. And what I was told was a man who was biking that morning, he saw me slumped over in the driver's side and called the ambulance. The ambulance came and picked me up, and they basically said you were out. Like, there was nothing like vital signs. You're functioning, but it's like a computer that needs to reset. So they did that. They just put me in a quiet room, and waited for me to wake up. And at the time I was dating someone, and he was also military, and he was getting on a plane to go TDY when the police officer called him as he was walking. He turned on his phone just long enough to text me and say, "I hope you made it to work." And that at that point, the police officer was like, "Sir, are you her boyfriend?" "Yeah." "She's unconscious in a hospital." Because he was like, no wonder she wasn't texting me back. So, yeah. And he said, "You weren't moving. You're breathing, but you weren't moving. And then when you opened your eyes, you couldn't remember the last 12 hours. So I looked like I'd been cut up by Freddy Krueger. They just cut up all my clothes and stuff. You just wake up like, I was on my way to work. Snowplows. Boston.
So did the snowplow stop or whatever?
No, it was a hit and run.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But the guy saw it.
Yeah, the guy saw it. Plus, when I described it, because all the snowplows in Boston had, like the plow itself was yellow, and there were yellow paint streaks where the impact was. So they're like, she wasn't lying. I mean, she had yellow paint. So it matches the description of snowplow, but they couldn't find who was on the route that morning. Yeah.
Did your insurance take care of it?
Thank God for USAA.
Yeah. They are fantastic.
They are. I got a new Honda. I was like, Honda saved my life, so I got another one.
Okay. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Anything else you want to tell me about Boston?
No.
No, we're done.
We're done.
Okay. So did you re-enlist again, or that was it? Because somehow you got to Ohio, so.
Yeah, I did. And sometimes I just like skipping this whole experience, but it is part of my life, so I will talk about it, okay?
Okay.
When I was getting ready to leave Boston, I was going to have my dream job at Wright Pat, and it was the last day. And this is a lesson that I would tell any troop about perception, that you can have a perception that you've done something wrong, and whether or not it's true, it can seem like you did it. And I learned a lot about the justice system in the military, how things can go really great and turn really bad fast. So ESC turned to LCMC. That's why they were shutting down the Electronic Systems Center, because they were going to stand up Life Cycle Management Center. And my team was in charge of the turnover, which meant new commander, all the headquarters staff is going away, change out all the nameplates, ESC, all over the base is changing to LCMC. My entire command, my whole chain of command, either retired or PCS'd before I left. So everybody's leaving. The only people left are myself, the vice's exec, the exec to the ESC commander was on vacation that week. And we had discovered there was a set of records that were, sorry, like my stomach's growling. We had discovered that there was a set of records that had not been signed. And there are lieutenant colonels and colonels who are saying, y'all are about to mess up our career if you do not get these awards and decks done, signed off. 3 days before the commander is about to retire, we had to hammer out like 30 for his signature, and we had found them in the command office, but we didn't know about them because they were not in They were not in our possession. But the captains were like, we're going to do it. We're going to get this done. So we got reamed. It was, a little butt chewing. But at the same time, I was like, wow, man, they have awards that are being done too. I want to be considered for one. I wasn't even thinking about the perception. I'm the CAG chief. So I put mine in there for consideration, but my team, my awards and deck guy, wasn't there. He was also out of office. So I put it in there. I put the nameplate that he normally puts on there. I sent it up for consideration. The commander came back to ask me a question like, are you sure that these are good to go? I said, yes, sir. Why is he talking? I was like, why is he asking me this? So my end of year decoration, all this stuff, I put up for his signature. I drafted it, I sent it. Didn't think anything of it. I was so wrecked that week. And it seemed like disjointed things were happening, but somehow it got all connected. I'm in a bathroom in the women's bathroom next to the command. What they didn't know is that I had been in the hospital in and out 23 times that year. When I had taken an assignment to Washington, D.C., so I did a CONUS deployment. It was an intel assignment, and when I got back, I got super sick while I was down in Washington, D.C. They couldn't figure out what it was. It was like stomach flu, but a year of it. Every day. Yeah. And so I'm losing weight. I'm stressed out. I'm in a high stress job that I'm sick. And by the end of that 3 days, I had probably been up for 72 hours straight, hadn't really eaten. My body was wrecked. And after it was all said and done, I just had a breakdown. I was in the women's bathroom just having a breakdown. And someone walked in, they're like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just cannot talk. And I dismissed, it was the secretary to the commander. So how about we fast forward to when I'm supposed to PCS to Ohio, and I'm asking for my end of year decoration. The commander has retired, and I'm waiting for the one that I sent up for his signature. The exec, he says, you need to go see Colonel so-and-so to get your end of year decoration. Why do I need to go see her? So I went to go see her, and she said, Captain, I need for you to report to this room, and when you're done, then we'll be, my stomach is just going to growl the whole time. When you're done, we'll come back and we'll talk. So I'm thinking, I have worked for her. I work for all the commanders on the base. So what I'm expecting is I have 2 days to PCS to Ohio, because I got orders to Ohio. I was like, I'm never moving there. So I got 2 days. The people who are supposed to move my stuff have already moved all my belongings. They've already transferred my stuff. The only thing I have is the uniform that I'm wearing and a overnight bag that's in my car. I go into the other room. And this investigator, this major, he's like, I'm an investigator for these UCMJ charges. I was like, what? Heroes, I've never been in trouble my entire career. I have never even been counseled in my entire career. I've never even so much gotten admonished. I've never. And pretty much I'd been given thanks and kudos for that last year of helping transfer everything over. So I was just really taken aback. I'm like, what is going on? So I'm listening to the charges, and it was like forgery and being AWOL, and it starts to sound like the womp 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 womp. Like, what? Where did these come from? And I almost wanted to laugh. I was like, I'm being punked. I was like, they're punking me. And he was like, would you like a lawyer? And I laughed. I was like, what? Okay. He's like, would you? And he was really stern. Like, would you like a lawyer? Because we can provide one. I'm like, he's not playing. This is real. These are real. This is bogus. So I was reading, I was like, that's bogus, that's bogus, that's bogus. Sure, I'll play along. So I went back to her office, and I'm just sitting there looking at her. I know she's a colonel, and I'm a captain, but I was just like, really? Like, ma'am. And she said, did you agree to counsel? please talk to me. Please like make this make sense. And basically, they gave me counsel, and I remember calling bowling, and I'm talking to the counsel. I was like, I don't even know what is happening. I said, I have an assignment to Ohio. I got to go now. I don't own anything. Where do I stay? And she said, well, you can stay on the base. I was like, are you guys paying for me to stay there? No, you're going to have to use your own money. You're going to stay on the base. I'm homeless. Like, I don't have anywhere to go. How long is this going to take? She said, I'm a mandatory reporter. If anybody brings anything to me, I have to open up an investigation. I was like, this is a command-directed investigation. What commander did this? Because I don't have one. So I'm thinking, I've worked so hard. Who turned me in? Who thought this was real? But they couldn't tell me that. They couldn't tell me who did it. They couldn't tell me what commander opened it. They couldn't tell me anything other than they said, you cannot leave the base. You have to stay on the base. We're going to give you a fake job you're going to report to until this is over. She said, this might just take a couple weeks, Charlynda. A couple weeks. We'll be done. I'm like, y'all figure this out. I was hot. I was so mad. Because like, who would do this? I'm trying to put the pieces together, like, why did this happen? What have I done to deserve this? And so as you start hearing like the explanations of what they thought had happened, they're like, we caught her acting irrational in the bathroom. We think that she was crying because she was upset that she didn't get an MSM as her last medal, that she got a commendation. And I'm like, who thought that? There's only 2 people that saw me in the women's bathroom, neither of which was the person who's writing this. She was acting out of character because she was crying. And I'm like, that is out of character, like that's wrong. And how did that get connected to any of it? I was just trying to make sense of the whole thing. But what it boiled down to was I ended up being on that base for 4.5 months. 4.5 months with no commander, with no job, with no purpose, with no home, trying to explain to people, where's she at? Because Ohio, they're like, where's our captain at? Where's she at? And you're innocent until proven guilty, I guess. But my majors board was that year, and the line said, because of things that she has done, which the case wasn't closed. So how have I done something if it's still an open investigation? We are not going to give her a promotion. So they took away my promotion before the case was even closed. And I'm homeless. And it didn't, I was like, does anybody care that they have turned my life upside down, that somebody waltzed in, turned my whole life upside down, and are expecting me to just suck it up and just take one, when all the evidence that I'm providing is showing that I have not. But what I'm realizing is perception. Where I was wrong was that I left things in a gray area. And I'll tell anybody now, your actions need to be black and white. Nobody should ever be able to waltz in and take something and twist it around to say, oh, she might have been doing this maliciously, or she might have been trying to circumvent the system. Her evidence is here, she's giving evidence, but it's a little fuzzy. So like AWOL, I'll give that example. I was given a day pass from the chief of staff. He said, I'd worked my butt off. You've worked your butt off, you can take a day. We didn't write that down. I mean, it was just, our staff was so fluid with the command staff. It was like, you need a day, take Friday. I don't want to see you. Come back on Monday. Cool. Day pass from the commander. But they're not documented. I could see tons of times that my staff, we were giving them a day, or, ma'am, I don't feel good, and maybe they should have gone and put on sick leave, but it was just go home. But in that instance, someone was able to say she doesn't have documentation to show that she had the pass, even though I said I had a pass, chief of staff said I had a pass. The person who had accused me of it saw an email where I said, hey guys, I'm enjoying the sunshine. And he said she was not in the office. She was not on leave. She has no documentation to show that she had a valid pass. She was AWOL. I was like, AWOL is like if you're missing, like if you're not there. So that was how a lot of these got drummed up. Things where I slipped in showing black and white accountability that a person, well, I would just say I know who it is now, but took it and twisted it. And I'm like, twisted it into 5 UCMJs.
Why do you think that person had it out for you?
Because we outed them for something they had done wrong. And the thing was, there's supposed to be off the record conversation with the commander. Tell us how you're feeling. Tell us what you've been going through. We're on our way out. Give us the real deal. So I was very honest and transparent. I did not think that would turn into, I'm going to talk to this person that she's telling me about, and I'm going to tell them that they're wrong to their face and, let them have it. But I'm going to drop her name. And so now this person's like, wow, you told the commander X, Y, and Z. Guess what I'm about to do? Mess up your life. Hey. But I was thinking that the system would see that. I was like, someone's accused me of being AWOL 3 months ago. Don't you have the authority to just say this is clearly vengeance and let it go? So that was a part of, everybody has a chapter of their life that they don't read out loud. That's one of mine. I was counseled by that commander who eventually took over the case. It went up so far that a general officer had to oversee it and just say, hey, you know what? That was what he said. It was like, this is a perception. You need to be mindful of the things that you did wrong. Take accountability for what you did wrong. That is very important. People need to never be able to question your motives or your actions like that. But in that 4 months, I had thoughts of suicide that nobody really knew that I was going through. You take a high-performing officer, at least I'm doing the best that I can at my job, and I think that I'm doing a great job. But in less than 4 months, you have turned me into someone with no purpose. You don't even check on me. I would reach out to that commander who was overseeing the case and was like, I'm still alive, hello. Oh, hey. I'm in the hotel room. There was one day that I woke up in particular. I'll never forget it. I was in the hotel on base, and this is probably around month 3. And the office that I was reporting to, you're just like an office gopher. Like, hey, can you print this? Hey, can you do this form? I'm like, this is not what I'm used to. And I'm tired of explaining to people why I'm still on this base. I'm not getting out of bed today. I'm not putting on my uniform. I'm not doing my hair. I'm not doing anything. And we're going to see who notices that I'm gone. Then I'm not here. Oh, by the way, I have a prescription for Ambien. Oh, by the way, I went to the shopette and got me some Jack Daniels. And yeah. So I was sitting there staring at this stuff, waiting, looking at my phone, sitting in the dark because I cut out all the lights, and I just sat there for hours. And it was probably around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. In my mind, I said, nobody cares whether I'm here or not. Nobody cares if I'm alive or dead. No one. Not this base, not the commanders. And at that point, I was like, not my boyfriend, not my mom. Like, I'm invisible. So I poured that glass of Jack Daniels, and I was drinking it and sitting there crying. And about the time that I'd put the pills in my hand, my phone rang. And I'm like, dadgummit. It was like interrupting my sorrow. My mom. Hey, baby, what are you doing? Nothing. She's like, I was just thinking about you. You're going to make it through this. You're going to be all right. And I said, yeah, I will. She said, have you gotten outside today? Have you got some sunshine? I'm sitting in the dark. Not yet. Go outside. Take a walk. okay? I love you. Love you too. She's like, you're my everything. And that, I was like, I'm her only kid. Like, what would it do to her? I can't do this. I won't do that. So I kept going. But I would tell people, like, I don't like to talk about that. It was a lot of emotions that really, I never thought it could happen to me, but it did. And when I showed up in Ohio, they got me another job. They stuck me on the headquarters staff, and I don't know how I made it past all that. I don't know how I just like walk in and just try to pretend like nothing happened. But that commander who oversaw the case was instructed, let her move to the next base. Don't say anything. This is gone. As soon as she leaves this base, it's done. They're like, let her go. And I moved to Wright Pat. She called and sent the entire portfolio, not of my rebuttal, not of all the stuff that I showed that I hadn't done anything. She sent all the stuff where they were trying to say I was guilty of everything to my new commander. So my new commander's like, wow, you been through some stuff. Well, we're glad to have you. Have you learned your lesson? I was like, are you treating me like a person who's done all this, or am I getting a second chance? Like, what is this? So I started at Wright Pat with this fog of this thing that I'm like, I'm going to have to perform my way out of this. That's my challenge. I have to perform and perform and perform until people are like, okay, wow, okay.
She's awesome, and that was just some mess.
Yeah, I have to now prove that I'm a good person, that I'm not malicious, that I don't cut corners, I don't, and that pressure to just prove that I am who I say I am, I'm like that. It just sucked, and I was trying to balance it all. I finished my last couple years at Wright Pat. I was there 4.5 years, and it was around 2013 that my mother, she said, you've asked me a couple times about your granddad. I meant to tell you that he left you something. Now, this is a man who never let me have anything, okay? Like, the fights that we had between my cousins because they got cars or money or allowance and stuff, and I'd be like, Granddad, can I have XYZ? He's like, cut the yard. What? Can I have this? He's like, help your grandmama out, and then I'll give you something. Do I get an allowance? I'm going to pay you $3 for B's and $4 for A's. What about a C? You don't get nothing for a C. So it was always, you do something, then you get something. So when I asked her, I said, what, he just gave me something? Yeah, he gave you pretty much the one thing he cared about a lot. And I'm thinking, his car? Like, no, my cousin got the car. He had a recipe for a sauce that he came up with in 1956. Aside from service, it was the one thing he was passionate about was food. And he gave me the only copy he's ever written of that recipe that he spent years trying to do. So I'm active duty at Wright Pat, trying to refine my purpose, and he left me no instructions. So I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this, but I'm going to try. Call it hokey, had a dream, and I'm in the little country store. There's a country store at the top of our hill where we lived. When you're a country kid, you had to fetch stuff, and they'd always give you like a little note. Grandmama needs this, and Granddad needs some Habitampa Jewels, cigars. And you just put the note up with the money on the counter, and they would pack the little paper bag and give it to you. There was no like, let me check your ID. So I was in this store, and every single shelf had a bottle of sauce. I was like, there's nobody in this store. And every shelf has this bottle on it. What the heck is it? So I see myself like walking towards it, and it just had his face on it. And I remember my uncle telling me the story about his call sign was Mutt in the military. They're like, this man could blend in anywhere. Stick him in Vietnam. He had friends all over the world. He could blend in with anybody, anytime. He had never knew a stranger. And I was like, it's his sauce. It's Mutt's sauce. So I woke up, I'm like, I'm gonna make bottles of sauce. I don't know how, but that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm trying to juggle my military career now with this new desire to do this. And I'm doing it on the weekends and at night. But something else was shifting towards 2013, 2015, that I cared about my personal life. This is the first time I really did care about my personal life. And I wanted to get married. And I was tired of seeing all these colonels, and you hear about their illustrious career, colonels and generals, like, well, tell me about your husband and your kids. Huh? What are those? I'm like, no, that's like, I wanted to go as far as I could, but I didn't want that. I did not want the I'm alone thing. I'm like, I don't want that to be my story. So I'd been dating this guy for a long time, and he had proposed, and he's like, I don't want to live apart from you. We spent 6 years chasing each other all over, trying to get the same assignment. And I remember the assignments, folks, I said, I want to move closer to my fiance. They're like, are y'all married? No. Well, we don't do joint lust assignments. We do joint spouse assignments here. So when y'all are serious, then we will seriously help you. And I'm like, we got to get married. We got to just do this. I don't know why we waited so long, but we got to do this. And we had gotten married on paper, and I was trying to move, and I was telling them, I'm not just moving to see my fiance, like, I want to move closer to my husband. And the commander at that time he was a new commander coming from another base, and they're like, this guy is like all mission, like people are not his thing. I'm like, oh, well, the previous commander told me that I could leave, so I'll just tell him in my first meeting that I'm leaving in the spring. He's like, no, you're not. What do you mean? He said, I'm going to put you on a source selection. Well, how long is that? It's probably a year. I don't know. I'm like, I'm going to be stuck in an office negotiating a contract with a team of like five or six other people for a year. And I just said, I want to have a personal life for the first time ever, and that's not important. At that point, I was like, I've given enough of myself. I need to start caring about myself. Because coming from that experience at Hanscom, I'm like, I realized, like, they don't care. I know that it's designed to nurture and grow people. They always say people first, but I was feeling like I was not having that experience. Me personally, I'm like, I have not been shown that my personal life is important right now. I'm willing to give them another 20 years if they would just give me this one thing. And I said, I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. So I got out of the Air Force 2015, active duty. I did sign on to be a reservist at the same time. And I walked back on the base the next day as a government contractor. Because I was like, oh, paychecks, those are really important. So that was my experience. I got to Ohio. I was there for like 4 years, got out in 2015, became a reservist. Because the other thing was I wasn't quite comfortable with being an entrepreneur. That to me, I didn't understand, like, people go full time with that. I was still treating it like a hobby. Like, this is great, love it, we've made the sauce, but it's not my full-time thing. So I was now a military spouse, and I moved everything. I got rid of all my belongings except for my clothes. And my husband, he was like, give all your stuff away to your parents. I have everything. I have a house, I have everything. Just yourself in a truck. So I drove down to Tennessee with a gigantic 24-foot U-Haul, gave my entire home furniture to my parents, who were very happy to refurnish their house. Drove back to Ohio, got in another U-Haul full of my clothes, and went to Washington, D.C. And I was there until last May.
And I take it your husband got assigned here and you're back here for that reason?
I am newly divorced.
Oh.
So that's the first time I've said that publicly. So, yes,
Are-
that was.
Are we happy about that or
Um,
sad? Is that too much information? We'll let it go.
Well,
I'm sorry.
yeah, that to me is,
My bad.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. Okay then.
yeah.
So why are you back in Ohio then?
Well, there's two things. One, it was, I think, better for me to be back in Ohio. The company had taken off. 2017, we won the Hero of the CEOs Award from Bob Evans Farms. They recognized 3 top veteran-owned businesses across the country, and we were one of those 3. That award came with a grant to expand the business, and at the same time, I learned that I was being considered by Kroger. And so I was like, wow, I've been flying. When I got married, I was flying back and forth to Ohio every single month. So I had to get a job when I got to DC just to pay for all these flights. It was important to keep the business alive because the local people were really starting to embrace it as their hometown brand. Even though my family's from Tennessee, this is an Ohio brand. So I didn't want that to falter, and there was a lot of pressure to make it a success. At the same time, you know, as a military spouse, I would say my hat goes off to these women because they don't just realize the magnitude of things that they do in a day, just supporting, especially if it's military, supporting your spouse with all their stuff and reading over their work for them and proofreading their briefings. And he was high speed himself. I mean, sometimes I was like, I can't keep up. You know, I just can't keep up. But at the same time, I had to take care of my company. I was a reservist. I was working at the Pentagon, the small business office, which came with its own set of responsibilities. And then I worked at the FAA as a portfolio manager in the headquarters office. So I'm working these jobs and flying back to Ohio and taking care of him and, you know, dinner on the table by 7, all that jazz. And yeah, I guess I would say the point was, you know, when you say you dissolved everything amicably, but he and I know the truth of why I left. It was not because I just didn't want to be married anymore. Some things had happened that I was like, I have standards. I was raised with standards of how a woman in a marriage should be respected. And for that reason, I could not stay in the marriage, so I left. I spent some time in DC living on my own, and my team was like, the whole thing like Hanscom, like you're going downhill. Like you're isolating, you're not speaking to anybody, you're going out. But I was like the pressure of running into people who would ask questions and would want to know what had happened. You're super dedicated, you just left? Like, what? Why? And you're towing the line of do you say anything, and what would that do to his career, and what do you want that stigma? It felt like the Beyonce, Jay-Z, I could write a Lemonade album, and do I just do that and go on the run tour and just act like everything's rosy and great? Or do you just write the Lemonade album and not do the on the run tour? So that was a decision that I made, was if I were to have, I always tell people, if you were to have children, the interaction between the parents is where you learn about love and respect. And I would always want my child to look at me and know that I am truly happy. I would never want to fake that to my children.
Kudos to you. It's never easy to make a decision like that, but I'm very happy that you are now successful in your sauce, that you are moving along very well, and you have quite a few accolades. Forbes, what else?
So Miss Veteran America competition was in 2016, and then we spent all of 2017 advocating as Miss Veteran America, as the Miss Veteran America runner-up. So I would go around the country speaking to American Legions, around DC, to different military groups to talk about women veterans issues, sit on panels and things like that. So it was a really great opportunity to really start learning about women veterans, the resources that we have in the country, and what we need to do better for our women vets. So,
what do you think we can do better for our women vets?
One is outreach, because I know in the state of Ohio, I also sit on the Ohio Board of Women Veterans. I'm a committee member for them. What we know is that there's over 60,000 in the state, but I mean the number that actually self-identify so that we can track them and tell them about resources is very, very low. Letting them know that there are places like the Wright State Student Veteran Center, and letting them know that there's opportunities for grants if they want to go to make their own business, letting them know that there are other people who can help them that are local to them, and then letting them know that they're not alone, because that was the other thing, is a lot of these women veterans, I think that they're alone in whatever situation that they're in, that it's unique, that it's actually not. And it's sad to say that, but like PTSD and MST, I mean, these are things that a lot of women are experiencing, but they're going through it by themselves.
VWise is an excellent program for women that, veteran women that want to open their own, be an entrepreneur. Do you know about that program?
Yes, I've heard about VWise.
Have you been?
I have not.
I have been. It is amazing.
Is it?
Yes, but we will talk about that some other time. Okay. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed in this interview that you'd like to bring up?
No. I mean, the journey to this point, I'd say that it's been very humbling. I think at this age, I'm looking at ways I can give back, because I feel like I've benefited so much from the village that raised me, and from the local community, and from my fellow women veterans and veterans. It's just really about what can I do to help others at this point in my life, and whether it's through Mutt Sauce and connecting American families one bottle at a time, or as a women veteran to tell my testimony, the good and the bad, because you never know who you can connect through the tough stuff too. So I've just been trying to get more open with telling the whole story and talk about those chapters that I normally wouldn't read out loud, but maybe that's what I need to do.
I am so appreciative of how real you were today. It has blown me away, and I'm just so thankful that you were very open and honest. I really, really appreciate that. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear or see this interview?
I want them to, if I could pass along something my grandfather would tell me, he said, humility will take you farther than money. We live in an instant gratification world. A lot of times they think that they should get something right now, a little bit of effort, a lot of return, and it just doesn't work that way, and you'll feel so much better if you have worked for it. I used to be so mad. Why did I have to work so hard for everything? Why did this man make me work for A's, for money for A's and all this stuff? Because when you look back on it, you can be proud that you worked for it. It wasn't handed to you. And even when he gave me no instructions with Mutt Sauce, I was like, I feel like I need to put in some work. And I feel better about where I am now, knowing that I was working hard and I was doing all that paperwork all night. My career, I'm grateful for the hours that I put in to help us defend our freedom. I was proud to raise my right hand. I loved all the experiences, and I just want to pass that along. I would tell them, don't be afraid of grinding. Don't be afraid of putting in the work. You'll appreciate the blessings that much better when they do occur.
Now, currently, you only, your job is Mutt Sauce only? That is full-time for you now?
So I just transferred over last October to do Mutt Sauce full-time. I also started another company recently called O-Taste Marketing, ohtastemarketing.com is our website. But the focus was on growing local small food businesses. And this is a very specific niche because Ohio is like a food mecca. If you look at all the big brands, they bring their headquarters here. Bob Evans, McDonald's, they all have Kroger, because you can test so many demographics in this area: college, retirees, military, moms, you name it. And I was wondering why in this area aren't the small food businesses doing well? Why was it so hard for me to find resources locally? And it's education. It's letting them know that, you know, you're really good at making cupcakes. You really suck at business though. And that's the reason, that's going to make all the difference. I don't want you to carry that secret shame. I'm here to hold your hand and say, business is what I do. My grandfather did the hard part with food. I know business, so let me be that business person for you to help you grow and help you streamline your processes. So those are my current missions with Ohio Women Vets: building more awareness, Mutt Sauce, expanding the company, O-Taste marketing to help other local small food businesses become successful.
Kudos to you. That's just amazing. That concludes our interview with Charlynda Scales. Thank you for your time today and for your military service.